Hello guys, welcome back to another video, a big, live, wonderful transfer chat about all the rumours from the world of Manchester City. Around the 21-22 transfer window, it's going to be a very, very busy one, so I had to get on the connected one, the 93-21, Mr. Ahsan Naeem. How are you doing, Ahsan? You good, mate?
I'm great, mate. How are you?
I'm very good, man. Looking forward to chatting about all this transfer stuff. And basically, if you don't really know about Ahsan, obviously he does a 93-20 podcast, which is a fantastic, informative, measured, and brilliantly connected podcast. I guess on some of the biggest names from the football world as well, constantly talking about all the stuff going around the City community and so on. And today I thought it'd be good to get Ahsan on just to chat about transfers, because this guy knows
my
his stuff.
Favorite subject.
Yeah, exactly, man. We all love a bit of transfer stuff. And I've seen you on the Blue Moon Forum getting giddy about transfers. So who better to get on than Ahsan as well, man? It's good to see you anyway. Are you all right in general, mate? You're good? How are you coping in everything at the moment? Because it's been a weird time.
You know what, mate? I'm good in the sense that I know what I've got, if that makes sense. I know that I have it easier than a lot of people. But beyond that, we've all been locked down for a year now. Most of the world has, and that's beginning to take its toll on everyone.
Definitely, man.
In the same way, and it's no different for us. Do you know what I mean? Like, me and Claire are here, and we've basically just been living with the two of us for a year. And you can love someone to the end of the world, but at the same time, at a certain point, you need other people in your life just to break up the monotony and the routine. And so that's been tricky, but I'm all right.
That's good, as long as you're okay. But it is difficult. We can all relate to that, I think, in our own way, because it's been a weird year. But the good thing is, we've got Man City. We've got Man City, man. And Man City are really good at football. And Man City are going to continue to be really good at football. And Man City are going to continue to sign really good footballers. Big love as well to Mooney there, representing Ahsan the Donny. Indeed, man, indeed. So I thought today we'd just go through pretty much all the big rumours at the moment. We're going to start initially, if that's all right, man, with a big one off the bat. Erling Braut Haaland, you may have heard of him. He's a pretty good footballer. The rumours today, apparently, he said that they must want me. If any club wants to sign Haaland, they must want him. Haaland, is he, in your opinion, or based on anything you've heard, still our number one target? How feasible does this feel for you, mate? Given obviously the massive clamour to sign a player as special as Erling Haaland.
I think it's it's better to look at it in a wider context. And what I mean by that is City, in my opinion, tend to operate in two different lanes when it comes to transfers. They have, transfers which I think are part of squad building, right? And those transfers are relatively movable. What that means for me is that you go and try and sign Jorginho whilst Fernandinho is still at the club, because you've got one eye on replacing him eventually, right? Yeah. But you can't pull Jorginho off. Fernandinho is still there, and you go, okay, it's not a red hot priority position. We're okay. We'll go another year. I think on the flip side, you have situations like the one that we're coming up to with Aguero, and that is that I think it's pretty apparent that the club are hedging their bets at best about what to do with Aguero. And if he goes, they will need not just a number 9. I think this is the bigger thing for me. Aguero has been Manchester City's marquee player for a decade, right? Yeah. Soriano talked about it I think he's done a lot of speeches where he's talked about the fact that, Aguero is City's marquee player. He's what they built this decade of success on. If he leaves, they will sign a marquee player. That's just the reality of being a big club. You do that. You operate like that. You have to have, at some level, one eye on marketing, on the expansion, the globalness of the club. And to do that, I think you always have to be looking at players who you think will help the club's profile. And so, to bring it all the way back around to Haaland, as far as I know, he is the club's number 1 transfer priority this summer. As far as I know, even with all of the rumours about other targets, I've heard that City are doing something that they don't often do, which is that they're actually not talking to other agents. They're not. Normally what they would do is they would spread their chips. 3-4 agents, 3-4 offers So if you don't get number one, number two, or number three is lined up, for whatever reason, this time round, it sounds like they're almost going, no, it's Haaland is the guy, and we feel that we can land it. So we're just going to focus on ending the season and then landing that target.
I mean, that makes sense as well, based off what I've read in the past as well. And I guess we saw a big proof as well last season where all of a sudden we went to Koulibaly, but then Koundé came out of nowhere. Then Diaz came out of nowhere. We know that City do have that, they have that many plates spinning at the same time when they're trying to sign a player for a position. But it does seem to be, we've seen some rumours, of course, about other players. We've seen Lautaro Martinez linked. We've seen tentatively Lukaku and so on. And of course, a player we'll get onto in a minute in Danny Ings as well. But it does feel like the eggs are in one basket, and it's Haaland in this instance. And I think as well at the same time, you raised a good point, which people haven't really talked about. The Aguero being the marquee player thing. I mean, Absolutely. You do need to replace a superstar sometimes with a superstar because once Absolutely. Again, global branding and all that kind of stuff, and it's a statement of intent just as much as it is a useful signing for the squad as well. You do have to sometimes scare your rivals into submission, and obviously what Haaland can bring to Manchester City is it's like signing Aguero again almost, isn't it? Not obviously, we don't know if it's going to come out the same way, but in terms of the fear factor he could bring, probably even more than what the fear factor Aguero brought when he signed. Bigger. I agree. Yeah. I agree. Which is interesting. I mean, you need to play those factors into consideration because they are factors. And of course, obviously it does then raise the interest of raise the question of why we're linked to people like Danny Ings. I mean, a lot of people went relatively heavy that yesterday. I mean, obviously the report suggests that he'd be a second striker, whatever that means. And that still then does raise a lot of questions like, what happens with Gabriel Jesus? Then what happens with the Liam Delap? Why are we having three strikers next season? And of course, as well, by the way, as we were live on this, Mike McGrath and all the aggregators reporting it, Mike McGrath said that the European clubs have been alerted to Mahrez and not agreeing a new contract to Man City with 2 seasons left. So that's obviously a little tiny rumour there. But I guess if we're signing potentially a second striker, I'll get your opinion on that in a second, by the way. But theoretically, if that was a thing, then you do think, well, someone's got to give. Someone's got to go then at some point. If you're signing, is it Jesus? Is it Mahrez? Is it Sterling? Who knows, man? But either way, what is your take on the idea of Ings being a more attainable option, apparently? And is it something you could see happening, having someone like Haaland and Danny Ings, or is it a case of City just sounding out potential alternatives?
No, Danny Ings has got a really good agent. That would be my answer to that lane. I mean that genuinely. I don't believe for 1 second that City have any kind of serious interest in Danny Ings because City aren't in the market for a backup striker. Gabriel Jesus is our backup striker, and he's Brazil's number 9, and he's brilliant as your second striker if you've got a number 1 who is a peak Aguero or Haaland or whatever. So I don't really buy the Danny Ings links if I'm honest with you. And I also know that he's in a contract dispute with Southampton right now. So
he's got a year left, hasn't he? As well.
Yeah, exactly. It always makes me doubly dubious when City are linked with a player who I instinctively look at and go, even if he's a good player, not sure he's good enough for City. And then I read, oh, they have a contract impasse. You're immediately like, okay, that explains that one. So no, I don't really see Danny Ings as a serious contender. I think I'd be interested to know from you, if you look at the list of other names, you put Haaland to one side, so you've got Lautaro, Kane, Lukaku,
Felix, maybe.
Yeah, João Felix. The interesting thing for me is that they all have different qualities. Yeah, but they're all super talented players, and I wouldn't be personally. I'm okay with. There's nobody on that list that I go, oh, if we signed him, that would be terrible. So what I want to know from you is there anybody on that list who you look at and go, he won't do it? If we sign him, we're just putting off a problem for another year.
Honestly, no. I mean, I think we've said enough in the history of Manchester City, especially in recent history, to suggest that we kind of get it right usually. It may take a little bit of time, but we do usually get it right. And even if Ings came, I got no doubts he'd be relatively useful in a kind of like B-Tech Dzeko kind of wave, you know what I mean? Like, I'm more respect to him, you know, like, but I'm sure he'd be useful. I mean, I think he's a decent player, you know. I don't think that's going to happen, but he's a decent player. But you know, 30 goals in 60 games since he left Liverpool, but that's not going to happen in my opinion anyway. I absolutely agree, and I feel like there's an element of just, you know, if he was on a list, he's on a backup. Lists do exist. We know this. We know lists do exist, and if he was on a list, he was like, it would have been on a profile list compiled by a bunch of scouts, and somehow some of that may have got out. But that doesn't mean you're going to sign him, man. Like, I make lists of places I want to go on holiday. It doesn't mean I'm going to visit them all. You know, like, the point is we know that these things exist, but they're hypothetical. But for me, looking at the list, the alleged list of names, obviously as well, that Patson Daka guy's been linked as well, who could Daka be the next Haaland. But maybe that's the kind of thing where Patson Daka, there's a natural route there to open up to Dortmund. Maybe he could go to Dortmund after Haaland or something like that. And apparently he'd only be around 20 million euros, which is seemingly a bargain for a guy with 27 goals and 8 assists apparently in 31 games over in the Austrian league, which is a natural progression once again, as Haaland did from the Austrian league. So I don't know, people like him, he seems exciting. I haven't watched him, of course I've not, but he seems exciting. Darwin Núñez is another player that's been linked, which once again, he looks to me like a young Cavani, who was a very good player at his peak, so fair enough. I like Lukaku. That's controversial amongst Manchester City fans, but I think he's a very good player. I think he'd be, and there's an element as well, I don't want it to happen, I want Haaland, but there's an element as well where if Lukaku came to Man City and was a success, which I think he would be, it'd be funny. It'd just be funny in a pure Bert kind of way, just to be like, you know what I mean? But either way, looking at all the players, man, Martinez, I still think as well, he had a very similar goal scoring record at a similar age to Aguero did actually when he joined. So it's one of those things where I'm sure he would go up a level potentially. But Joao Felix, if we're playing the false nine thing, maybe Joao Felix is our option. But for me, Haaland just is the one, and that's not because it's not because I think he's the best player there, though he probably is. It's just more because I feel like we potentially need him more than the rest of them. And I feel like there's that link emotionally. I think what it says for us, that we will, it's a statement, isn't it? As we talked about a few minutes ago, it's a statement. It's a statement. And I've already seen people like, you see fans on Twitter going like, oh, well, the league's over already. And that's from other fans, you know, like, but that's Liverpool fans saying that. And that there's something to be said about the power of just fear and the power of feeling absolutely hopeless. And that's what Haaland could do, where I don't feel like the others have that feeling of hopelessness. Maybe an Mbappe, but that's never going to happen. But either way, Haaland has this aura around him that just terrifies people. And I think City know that. They're not stupid. Aguero had that aura at his peak. And I think Haaland has that aura too. So that's why, for me, I see Haaland as the one. As good as the others are, and I'm sure they'd be fine. Yeah. Even Kane, I don't think has that same fear factor. Even though he's brilliant, Kane, I don't think he has the same fear factor as the potential 10, 15 years of Haaland because of what Kane Haaland... Would, you know. Do you reckon? But I mean, long term, I guess maybe.
Maybe you're right. I think the thing is, Kane. The thing with Kane is that you can't dispute how good a number 9 he is, and I think that you're absolutely right. I think Haaland ticks every single box because think about it. Like there's so many pictures of Haaland as a kid in a City shirt. The marketing department will be rubbing their hands together. The opportunity to have a player who will have that sort of global profile, that sort of talent level, and his connection to City is so deep that he was member of a supporters club a year and a half ago. There's countless pictures of him wearing City shirts, training in City shirts. So, you know, it's funny. One of the things with Haaland that I find really interesting, if you flip everything to United, right? So he's the child of a former United player. United have Pep Guardiola as the coach. United have been the most dominant team for the last decade in the Premier League. There wouldn't be a conversation about where Haaland is going next. You could write Real Madrid are interested, Barcelona are interested. There wouldn't be a conversation. Everybody would just go, including the media, everybody would just go, it's obvious he's going to United because DNA, history, all of those things.
Yeah.
The same applies here now. 100% the same thing applies here now. A lot of people are kind of going, why are you so confident? And it's like, it's not about being in the know. It's just about looking at it logically and factually. Raheem Sterling, I called it like March. I was like, Sterling's only going to City and it's going to happen. De Bruyne, I called it. Sometimes City, they make it clear. They go after one lad and they make it clear early. They say, you're the one for us and we're going to move whatever mountains we need to move to get the transfer done. And Haaland, it's so obvious that they're doing that, and it's so obvious why they're doing it that it's just a no-brainer, mate. It's just an absolute no-brainer.
I agree. There's people arguing in the comments about Haaland being a Leeds fan potentially. I actually think the truth is probably just both. I think he did have a thing for Leeds. Of course he did, because his dad was there. And he had a thing, probably, I think his dad said as well, he had a thing for Forest because he was out of point. But I think he's obviously a kid, follows around. But we all know, like, he obviously has a strong affinity to possibly the best team in the world, which is Manchester City, a club much more suited to his current needs than Leeds, with all due respect to Leeds. So, yes, he definitely has a soft spot for Leeds. Of course he does. But I think it's pretty obvious by the pictures and by everything that he has a massive soft spot for his dad's old club, Manchester City, as well. So he's a fan in the sense that as much as he can be without being a season ticket holder, and he's dad being there all his career, I would say. He clearly is.
Look, they've got Mbappe as a Real Madrid fan, right? Because he had some Ronaldo posters on his wall, and because they've got a picture of him in a Madrid shirt, right? The whole world is like, Mbappe is a Real Madrid fan. So, for me, the same applies here. Like, Haaland was training at Salzburg in a Balotelli top. I've seen the videos, right?
Yeah, same.
It's pretty obvious where the stronger affinity is for me, and it's with City. It's clear.
I agree, and I want this to happen more than any other transfer ever, even possibly more than last summer. Because I'm going to get onto this question, because that hype trade is never going to die until it's dead, until it's crashed, or it's
we've done what, 15 minutes, and we've not mentioned it yet. So
yes, but of course we're all talking about Danny Ings. No, we're obviously talking about Messi. I mean, like Messi, man, obviously at the moment he's still not signed a contract, and I guess while that's still happened, he's going well for him at Barca at the moment in terms of his form is sensational again. He's scoring more than a goal a game, and he's creating loads of games, and Messi's showing everyone that even a 30-odd-year-old Messi is still just insane. He's better than 99.99% of footballers. We all know that. And obviously, of course, there's been some links to PSG as well, but according to the latest reports, neither club have made an offer yet. We know that's probably true, I would say, because in fact that not official offer, an offer and an offer, it's two different things. It's discussions and so on, I would say. But
you don't think the Messis don't know what City would give them if he wanted to come? I mean, talking about like Messi saying he's not had a contract offer from PSG or City yet, that's because he knows that his dad just needs to go, give me the contract, and it will be in the inbox 7 minutes later.
Exactly. So where do you feel in this one? Like, on a personal level, how do you feel about the idea of Messi still being a Manchester City player? And second point, I guess, would be, do you feel like there's still legs in this rumor?
So I want Messi. Like, I don't think I've ever hidden that. I think
same.
What he represents for City is way bigger than we can really know right now. That impact will be measured if it happens afterwards. It's a little bit like saying before we sign Aguero, what impact is Sergio Aguero going to have? You can't measure that at the time. You've got to wait until afterwards. But I think the impact both on the pitch and off the pitch would be so big that for me, it would be, I just think if you do it, you do it. I don't really want to try and predict what Leo will do because I think nobody really knows. I feel a little bit like, if you wanted to line some things up, Guardiola and Juan Lilo going to Barcelona to sit with Leo last summer is weird, right? In the middle of a pandemic, you can do that. You can do that thing over a video call. It seemed really weird to me that you would go to Barcelona to have that conversation. I think maybe Pep was already there. I don't know. Anyway, either way, my personal theory on it last summer was a little bit that if this isn't for now, it's for next year. If it isn't for now, it's conditioning the Barcelona fans, conditioning the world, letting everybody know I'm not happy here and I want out. Now, that could well change from a personal point of view. He could turn around at the end of this season and go, yeah, I think I'm going to stay here now. I'm happier. Fine. But if he were to give any indication that he was going to leave Barcelona, I'm certain that City would put a contract in front of him that would convince him to come to City. So it's kind of a long-winded way of me sitting on the fence and going, I don't know. I almost don't even want to guess what will happen because I feel as though if you go one way, you get a certain kind of stick. You go the other way, you get a certain kind of stick. So it's certain I don't know, but I want him. and I'm convinced that they will try and move him. And I think it's kind of connected to something you just touched upon earlier when you talked about Mike McGrath talking about Mahrez. What I found quite interesting in the last 3 months, 4 months, Pep's continual narrative that anybody that's not happy needs to ring their agent and leave at the end of the season. Anybody that's pulling a face can leave at the end of the season. I love the fact that he's constantly like, call your agent if you're not happy with your game time, call your agent and get a move, basically. And it's been very pointed this season, and people have speculated that he's having goes at players. And I'm talking to journalists, the press pack around City, they're all convinced that he's sending coded messages to people. So I don't think Pep sends those messages unless there are genuinely unhappy people in the dressing room. And I think that why I'm really fascinated by this transfer window is because I think that City are in the strongest position of maybe all of the Premier League clubs, in the sense that their liquidity, their cash liquidity means they can do stuff that will be a struggle or a stretch for other clubs from a cash flow point of view. It also means they're in no desperate need to sell unless they get the offer that they want. And I think that it can make them a bit more, City can be a bit more on the fly. And what I mean by that is maybe PSG turn up and go, we'll give you 75 million euros for Mahrez. And maybe the club go, oh, you know what? With 2 years left on his deal at 30, we're taking that. But if you sell Mahrez for 75, you got to do something else somewhere, right? And that's maybe where something like the Jack Grealish link comes in, that maybe City have lined up somebody like Grealish because they're looking at certain areas of the pitch in the summer and they're going, we might lose a player here because he's unhappy, or we might get an offer because we know from the kind of football grapevine that there's interest in this player, or this lad could move for a fee. So I feel really excited because I think that, as well as what will be a massively impactful summer in terms of not filling out the squad, buying players who remove players from the best 11. So Haaland comes in, somebody who's currently in the best 11 gets bounced. Yeah. I imagine that almost every signing this summer will be about challenging the best 11 and going, you're going to have to be better next season because this guy, he's here to take your shirt. And I quite like the fact that Pep this season has been even more ruthless in terms of basically going, I don't care what your reputation is or how long you've been. I mean, just look at what he's done with Aguero. I mean, how do you do the club's biggest legend still at the club? How are you going to do him like that? And Pep's so comfortable in his position within the hierarchy, with the supporter base, with the squad, to just go, you're not playing. Sorry, you're not playing. It's not a charity. I've got players who will, for me, are more likely to get a positive result. So I'm not going to weaken the team to put you in. I think that's huge.
Oh, massively, man. I mean, imagine what that sends a message, not just to the fans and everyone else, but what it sends a message to the players, as you said. Like, if they can see someone like Aguero, and I feel for him. Of course, we all do as Man City fans. But, I mean, I can't really sit here and say he's wrong, because he quite literally is right, because we are in 4 trophies and we are favourites to win all these trophies and whatever. And it means, by default, Guardiola's getting it right, and we can question him, but we're probably not right. I mean, but what it sends, the message it sends to these players, as you said, is that no one is untouchable, not even Sergio Aguero. He has to sit there, unfortunately, probably leaking stuff to the press pack, which I don't blame him for doing because he's upset and he doesn't want to leave Man City. But that's where we've left him. I mean, it's awful and heartless for him, but at the same time, it's brutal in the way that only kind of someone like Guardiola could be and get away with it, I would say. Guardiola at the moment, it does seem to have found his mojo. And I do like the, you're tired, fuck you, Pep. I like that Pep. That Pep to me gets me excited. That Pep to me is brutal, brilliant. That's a winning Pep, and that's the Pep that we probably didn't see last year for very obvious personal reasons, which you don't need to go into anymore. We know, but he had a tough year in the way a lot of us did, you know. And I feel like Pep has definitely rediscovered that fire again. And you're right, you're absolutely spot on as well. I do feel like he's very much he's not really beating around the bush anymore. If there is a player unhappy, which once again the caveat does need to be added, unhappy players in a squad full of 20-odd international superstars is probably normal. It's totally normal. They're all absolutely obsessed with themselves. They all are. Footballers spend all their lives being told they are brilliant. Of course, every now and then they are going to have slight egotistical urges where I should be playing because I'm player X or whatever. And that's, once again, that's exactly what makes them who they are. That's what makes them winners. So it's totally normal. But I do love that Guardiola is essentially just big dick energy in them. He's like, no, I'm Pep Guardiola. Like, and you cannot stand in front of me and tell me you should be playing while we're getting these results and whatever. And Guardiola is right to do that, in my personal opinion. It's ruthless, but you have to be. And it's ruthless. If you're successful at the same time, well, then quite simply, he is right to be that way. And I probably slightly agree with you that there is an element for a little bit of freedom in the transfer market this summer. Like, I do think, and there was a nice segue as well into Grealish there, that certain players' futures may be linked to a potential departure of other players' futures. I mean, we'll go on to Grealish because Grealish is a player that we all know is very, very, very talented. I don't know your personal opinion on Grealish, but mine is that he seems to be getting better every single year. And I do really like him, and he does seem to have an ability to slow play down that pause effect, then speed it up and go through the gears. And he seems to love, I mean, he's not really hid the idea. He loves the idea of playing for this club. That seems really obvious. He's obsessed with De Bruyne in the way that, I don't know, some of us are of the stars that we watch every week. He seems to be obsessed with the idea of playing alongside Manchester City. And that is usually a very good thing, which is a good thing, once again, for the message it sends to the rest of the squad. Like, if you want to go somewhere else, I'm not using him for any other reason that he's in the news right now, Mahrez. I'm not saying Mahrez should go because he's a brilliant footballer. But, for example, if Mahrez did want to go, well, we'd go, all right, we can get Jack Grealish who wants to be in. Or same if it was, I don't know, Foden a few months ago when there was rumours. Or same, I'm not using Mahrez for any reason that he's relevant right now. So basically, I guess the point is power.
Mahrez
I probably agree.
To me, that I kind of look at with those two and I go, you know what? Like, if Grealish... So I'd like to know what you think. I think there's two ways that Grealish gets him at this squad. One of Mahrez or Sterling ends up getting sold this summer, which I think is pretty unlikely, to be honest.
I agree.
I think, the Mahrez thing, it'll make a nice story, but I'm not convinced that anybody will come with the money that City will want. And he looks like he's finally clicking in Pep's system, and I think it'd be a bit of a shame to have a lad click after 2 years and then to bounce in that summer. And I think Sterling's just being the fact that he has scored so many goals in the last 2 or 3 years. You don't sell a goal scorer like that unless you're bringing mad quality in. And on the flip side, how do you value Raheem Sterling? Like, City will look at it and go, he's 100 million plus player. There's not a club in the world that, even if they wanted to, could pay 100 million plus right now, except for United. And obviously, we ain't ever going to sell him to United. So yeah, I'm a little. I find it a bit hard to see how we do Grealish in those positions. What I do see is that if Ferner and Aguero both end up leaving on frees, I can see Gundo being used more in the 6 next season.
No, I agree.
Grealish coming
that makes
in
sense to me as well
as the other 8, because if you look, I mean, I guess in a way, the tricky thing is that Gundogan's attacking prowess this season has gone like that. It's crazy. But whereas if you'd have looked at it at the start of the season, you'd have probably gone, it'd be nice to have another 8, especially if Foden is going to be a front 3 player. I'm now convinced that Foden, for the foreseeable, is a front 3 player because he's just too good in and around the box to be sat on the halfway line dictating play. So I think that means that we have one less position in the front 3 because Foden's taken it. And I think we probably have one more in the 8 because whereas they probably thought 12, 18 months ago Foden would step into that slot that David Silva left, he probably isn't going to step into that slot now. So for those reasons, that's my vibe on where Grealish fits.
No, I'm with you on that one. And going back to the earlier part of that discussion about Sterling and Mahrez, I don't see either leaving. I don't think deep down they probably want to leave. And also, I don't really see where they go. I mean, you talked earlier about the idea of PSG coming in for a big bid, and we know they've got history of doing that before. I mean, look at the Neymar and Mbappe, and look at I guess what they did with David Luiz a while back. I wouldn't be surprised if they just randomly dropped 50 million quid or whatever. I don't know. It's very possible that they could do that. But either way, I don't really see it happening. I feel like they'll end up being here next season. And at the same time, I don't see Sterling going anywhere because I think Sterling's in a weird situation where the world knows he's brilliant. But at the moment, the perception of Sterling, Sterling gets a weird stick, right? Like around the world, like City fans, well, some City fans know that he can be fantastic. But at the same time, I feel like the rest of the world doesn't really pay much attention to Sterling at the same time. It's weird. I don't know. He's in this kind of bubble where. Do you reckon?
I disagree.
Interesting.
I think the issue is that inside the City bubble, we take Sterling for granted, right? So we
presume everyone else does, maybe, or the Premier League bubble, maybe. I don't know.
So somebody said to me yesterday, and I completely agree with this. Sterling will play in the Champions League games because teams on the continent pay Sterling far more respect than we realise. And if you look at his record in the Champions League. People can point at, go, yeah, but he missed an open goal against Lyon. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, he terrorizes teams in group stages. And you can talk about, well, it's Sevilla, it's not peak Bayern Munich. It doesn't matter. Like, the point is that I think that in the wider footballing world, they know how good Sterling is, which is why he's a £100 million plus player. I think the issue for us right now is that, one, his form isn't great.
Yeah.
And secondly, Raz just carries a weird stigma with him. I did a whole yesterday's podcast review that we released had a 10 or 15 minute section chopped out of it, which was me and Howard discussing the stigma around Sterling. And it's so controversial that we finished the podcast and I just went, delete that whole section. Just take it out. You're going to end up with, it's just going to generate controversy for no reason. I don't think it's necessary. But yeah, just to go back to what you're saying, I don't think Raz will get sold because I don't think that I think he's valued at a level that the clubs that would want him probably haven't got the cash to get him. Weirdly enough, I think that if Arsenal had a better season, so let's say that for argument's sake, let's say that Arsenal end up finished in the top four. Kind of look at Aubameyang and what's going on with him and Arteta, and you go, you know what? If I was on the board of directors at Arsenal or I was Arteta, I'd be going, let's figure out a way to get rid of this clown who's on 350k a week, send him somewhere else, and use that money to bring in Raheem Sterling, who will be our bona fide star player. He is England's, along with Harry Kane, best player right now. He would be moving home back to London, that sort of vibe. So for example, looking at it from the Premier League perspective, Arsenal in a different season maybe could have looked at something like that. But yeah, for me, he goes nowhere.
No, I agree. He doesn't go anywhere too. And I do actually, we didn't get into it, and I don't think we should, you're right, but I do think there's a stigma around Sterling, and I guess maybe that's what I was talking about. And you're probably right about the continent viewing it differently, but Sterling feels to be, he's a strange one for Sterling. I've never seen a player who's proven as much as he's did, get as much criticism as he has as well at the same time. He feels like he's in his own little weird world at the same time. But we'll move on from these guys, because Grealish, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that Grealish is a circumstantial transfer as opposed to that's how I feel about Grealish. I do feel like he's there potentially if we decide we need them, but at the moment I'm not really sure we do. I want to say thank you to Patrick, who's big up with the super chat. Patrick, thank you so much, man. He said, what will happen at left back and what does that mean for Zinchenko? Patrick, it's a good question, man. It's a good question because we have obviously been linked to Nuno Mendes. Ahsan, Nuno Mendes is a player that City have apparently been paying a lot of attention to. And there's been so many reports of that in such quick succession that I'm not sure if someone's getting carried away or if there actually is some validity in it, because he seems a very talented player. I've done the whole YouTube thing like everyone else. And no, I didn't know much about him before City were linked to him. But there is something there. And I think the left-back situation is one that's kind of drag on. I've started to feel like City might feel it's not much a big issue as it used to be at the moment because it's Zinchenko. But what's your take on the left back situation?
I said yesterday, right, that like in a way, I can't imagine a world or a planet or a universe where they go another year without signing a left back. I just can't imagine it. Like, it just feels like too much for me. It would just feel like too much. Having said that, I also kind of feel like Cancelo's almost put himself in a position where he's part of the structural side of the team. I think I've talked about this in podcasts before, that Marty Perinault, who, if you don't know, wrote Pep Confidential, fantastic author, spent a year with Pep in Bayern and knows him quite well. Marty often talks about structural players inside Guardiola's team, and they are just players who are part of the, every game they're part of the structure of the side, and then you kind of fit players around them. And I wonder whether Cancelo is becoming a structural player, and if he is, then you need enough space to let him play at left back, because Walker needs to play. You can't just go, well, Cancelo's so good that Walker's never going to play now. So I wonder, I fear Stefan is probably going, don't even say it out loud, don't will it into existence. But I wonder
just
whether
just to annoy him.
Yeah, I wonder whether they might go another year and go, and also like with Mendy, like who's taking him? Like, what, you giving him away? I don't know.
That's my theory, man. I feel like they might just be like, Zinchenko's really good. Cancelo can play there. Ake could probably play there. Laporte could probably play there. That's a discussion for a minute, actually. Maybe they'll just be like, why not just kind of go another year, which is going to piss so many people off and it'd be hilarious. But it'd be so Man City to do that. And we know Man City do this. And I do agree that Zinchenko could be heading towards that structural play. And I think there's a lot of respect towards Zinchenko from Guardiola, actually. And I think, weirdly, how Zinchenko dealt with that stuff with his missus. I wouldn't be surprised as well if that earned a lot of respect from Guardiola as well, because what I've heard personally is that he just handled it man-to-man kind of thing, spoke to him and she didn't mean offence and blah, blah. And there's almost an element of respect between the two players, because obviously he's a very likeable guy, Zinchenko, very likeable. And he's one of the most popular players around Manchester City because he's a lovely lad, apparently, dead hard-working, dead professional, and humble as well. And I do wonder if his standing has massively improved at Manchester City to the point where it's like, not solved the problem, of course, but I guess the thing for me of the left-back situation is that Zinchenko is a certain type of fullback. I think we know that now. He's become a structural one. Very much, he's the one who steps into midfield, and we don't need to go on the inverted fullback thing. But what if we want a fullback, a traditional fullback? What if you want someone who can, just get down the wing and put it across him? You're old school, because at some point, what if Cancelo goes out injured? Touch wood, it doesn't happen. But then you've got Walker playing it right back. Walker isn't that anymore. He was at one point at Spurs. He was a little bit more attacking, but I think it's fair to say these days he's probably the one who's going to kind of tuck in and play more as evolved the back three. What if they decide they need a little bit more width on the left? Do they just want a different kind of fullback? Because Mendy hasn't really been that, and it feels like the Mendy thing has kind of unfortunately run its course to me. But who goes for Mendy? And what do you reckon to the Nuno Mendes links then? So is it a case of there's something in this, or is it a case that maybe we'd go for him, then park him at his club for another year on loan or something like that? What do you reckon?
I don't think so, because I think that Nuno Mendes is a kid who, even though he's really young, I think they've almost already decided that he's going to end up being a top left back. Yeah. And so that release clause is really high already. I think it's 70 million euros or something.
Yeah, something like
that. I don't see, like, I mean, again, it's one of those. I said to somebody last week, to my brother, there's no way that City is spending 50, 60 million euros on a left back this summer. And my brother just looked at me and went, when have you not spent 50, 60 million euros on a defender? And it's kind of a fair point, with the exception of Zinchenko, right, who was bought as a CFG player. We're in that market. 40, 50, 60 it seems, and release clause, 40, 50, 60, it seems like our sweet spot. I guess
there's the Pedro Porro thing, but as well, Pedro Porro, who's just broken to the Spain team, and that's worth a lot of money. That Pedro Porro thing. I mean, actually, Brian's just raised that point exact same time as me. Brian said 30 million plus Pedro Porro seems a good offer for Nuno Mendes. And you know what? You're right, because the resale value potentially Pedro Porro is a lot, but then I guess it depends how City handled that as a package, because there's big value, both of those players in their own unique way. And Pedro Porro, of course, Man City player now in the Spain squad. If you don't know much about him, he's a very brilliant attacking right back, who's causing an awful lot of headlines, and once again broken to the Spain squad. So he's a pawn in this potential Nuno Mendes deal as well, isn't he?
I've just been convinced by Brian's on-screen offer.
Bring him back up there.
30 million plus Pedro Porro. You know what? I take everything I've just said back. We might end up doing that. If they really, really want Porro, and Porro obviously is broken into the Spain squad, is going to be highly rated. that's exactly the kind of bargaining chip that City love. I mean, look, we managed to send Otamendi to the place where we took Diaz from. That's that's a cheeky masterclass. So if he can go and he can do, send him Porro and bring back Nuno Mendes for 25, 30 million euros, I'll take that all day long.
And Patrick's raised the point as well. Like, what about Jan Couto? He's actually broken into the team now. He started playing really well. He's only in the second tier, obviously, of Spanish football, but he's been in the team of the week over there a couple of times now, and he's only 18 years old, so there's no rush there. And I guess we've also got that young lad, Clive Aguilera. I don't know much about him, but point is we don't really need a right back. And Pedro Porro, as good as he is, it could be that they're like, well, we've still got Cancelo and Walker. And Walker's a physical freak. He's going to be around for 2 or 3 years yet. And Guardiola rightfully trusts him. So it could be that Jan Couto, in the long term, in terms of succession planning, is something that they consider for Porro's usefulness potentially. And then there's just so many things that could move around because this Man City side, they're playing 3D chess, aren't they? They really are. Like they're so far ahead of most clubs in terms of their succession planning. That we never know what they're going to do, so it'll be interesting. And the final position I want to talk about, mate, is well, I guess as well, I want to get your opinions on general transfers that we may not have discussed yet and maybe outgoings, but I'd like to know your opinion on the idea of a long-term Fernandinho replacement, because Dennis Zakaria has been linked quite a lot. We've seen Locatelli linked, we've seen Douglas Luiz linked. Of course, Fernandinho has been brilliant as well. Like, it isn't maybe a growing clamour for Fernandinho to get another year, and that's not even unreasonable either. But how do you see the future of this position playing out, and is it something that will be addressed this summer?
I think that 2 players per position is the starting point, and I think if Fernandinho goes, it'll be connected to what they do with Gundo, whether they think Gundo takes that spot and they buy someone further forward, or whether they buy another specialist number 6. So here's what I think. I don't think it makes massive sense to go out and buy another specialist 6. That's exactly what Rodri is. I think if you want to buy a player, you want to buy somebody like Gundo. You want to buy somebody who, well, either you move Gundo deeper and you just buy a pure number 8, or you leave Gundo where he is and you buy another player who's like a young version of Gundo, somebody who can do the 6, but also has the potential to play further forward. Because I just don't see the point in having 2 specialist number 6s in the squad. I agree. I kind of feel like Rodri is also like he's building. Obviously, he's improved massively this season, but I feel like there's almost another step he's going to take in the next 6 to 12 months. And if he takes that step, we're going to be going, he's got to play every game. And I think that then the whole conversation around who is the other number 6 is going to be a lot quieter than it was, because I think we're all still conditioned by thinking Rodri ain't going to cut it. Because I think this season, start of this season, a lot of people were like, Rodri just isn't the guy and we need to go out and buy another number 6 now. And I think that's changed. I think everybody, or most of the people that I know who question Rodri now feel, no, he will be a 6.
And the thing is, you've raised a good point, which has been proven by Manchester City squad. Like, I don't see the point in signing a number 6 like Rodri, because City don't do that. We know, look at our options around the pitch, that they are all different in their own way anyway. The 2 fullbacks are different. The versatility, we always do tend to have a different take on the position. I mean, we all know that Bernardo probably loves playing on that inside kind of right 8. So does Kevin De Bruyne. They're very different kind of players. And we look at our wingers, Sterling and Mahrez are very different players, and our strikers are very different players. And but that's intentional. We know it's intentional. This Man City board aren't making these signings just because, he's good, we'll get him. No, it's because he brings something different. And that's what this is Guardiola down to see. He doesn't want 2 classic number 9s. He doesn't want 2 classic number 6s. He wants players that can be something different. A lot of people have mentioned Husamawa. It could be a potential alternative in that kind of deep line playmaker role, and I see that. But there's also the factor as well, and I'm not just doing my usual academy players are good kind of thing here, but I'm just saying this because there's a kid in the academy called Romeo Lavia who's genuinely fantastic. I rate him very highly. I'm talking.
Can I tell you something about him?
Go on, mate.
So my boss, the executive producer of a show that I'm working on, so technically he's my boss, he's in his 60s and he's a lifelong Anderlecht fan. Okay. And when they lost Lavia, he was absolutely gutted. And he really knows his football stuff. And he said to me, that boy will play for Manchester City's first team. And I was like, he's 16. How do you know that? And he was like, he will play for your first team. He's got the brain of an 18, 19-year-old at 15, 16. So I've had that hype in the back of my head for a while. And I wanted to ask you, how good is he?
Mate, I saw him. The best thing I can say is that when he was 16 playing in the J Trophy, which is against senior pros, even if they're not, the best level in the world, but it was his confidence and his touch, his technique, and it's the way he moves with the ball when he's surrounded by players. It's so natural to watch him play football. He's a special talent. His spatial awareness is already far beyond his level. He's already too good. He doesn't get dispossessed. He moves the ball so well. That breaking the lines cliche. He's a natural at it. His positional sense, he's fantastic. He's a special talent. Honestly, he looks too good already for the EDS, and he's only just turned 17, I think. Already looks too good. And I do wonder if there's an element of where by 18, he should be around the squad in the way that Phil Foden is potentially. And if we do the preseason thing, we always have that list of young players who are called up. And I've noticed a pattern in this. The players that are called up for preseason are always the ones who are then using the Carabao Cup. It's always the same. It's like Guardiola gets a look at them, and then they are his go-to youth players. Yeah. And I do think next season, it may be a year too early, but Lavia will be in that list of players who train regularly with the first team and are there and around if Guardiola needs them. It might be a year too soon, but he is a talent that to me, in his position, he looks as exciting as even someone like Phil Foden. I know that sounds crazy to say, but he does look that good. He's up there for me, genuinely. I've got to bring over his super chat, but John is a very negative view of the academy. He says, remember, we have Pep. Pep is not equal or the same as the academy, which is not sure if that's what you meant with the symbol there, but I agree. But what I will say is that the reputation of the academy is frustrating watching it as a fan. But I would say Foden is part of the first team now, and as much as we want more, Garcia was for a little bit as well. We have started to use them slowly, I would say. Not enough for some people, I get that, but I do feel like there is still room for a special player to potentially do something with a little bit of luck. Academy players are all about luck, you do have a little bit of luck and so on. But I guess the point I'm making is that it could even be that they go, Fernandinho's brilliant, give him one more year, give him 1 more year teaching Lavia, and he could maybe with the backup because he's a very exciting talent. But I guess we don't know.
I mean, if you do the we'll move Gundo back to the 6 and we'll let Ferner go on a 3 and we'll bring Grealish in and he can be an English player and also be in that number 8 conversation, you've bought yourself a year, and 12 months from then, if Lavia is that good, Gundo will be 32 at that point, and maybe he'll be thinking about going back to Germany. So maybe you buy yourself a year and you do it like that. Hey, can I ask you about Cole Palmer really quickly?
Yes.
Just in terms of what I want to know is just what's his position?
I want to touch on that because also I want to touch on this comment from Travis. He said, come on, Stephen, very soft on academy players. Everyone who follows me for any period of time on social or whatever, know I'm all about using academy players. My stance is softened simply because I think Pep gets it right. And I don't really, I guess the point I'm making is we know how egotistical players are. And how do you tell Mahrez he ain't been on the bench this week because we want to put Cole Palmer there? You can't do it. You just can't. And I think it's because Mahrez's mates will agree as well. They'll be like, well, if it causes unrest. And I guess the point I'm making is that as much as I want academy players to be used, at the same time, we're in all 4 trophies. So ultimately, I have to defer my perceived wisdom and go, well, he knows more because it's right. And he's been proven right. And I have to turn around and go, well, yeah, I mean, what more can Pep say? Well, you want me to play academy players, but I'm still on to win 4 trophies. So you're telling me I'm wrong. So I guess my wider view in the academy players is as good as they are, and they are fantastic. I also agree that I also can't claim that Pep is wrong. He quite literally is right on how he's been using the squad, and the proof is in the very lovely pudding that is all these trophies at the moment. So, reason I'm soft, I guess, is because I think it's a rock and a hard place. Unfortunately, we want to use academy players, but we want to win all these trophies, and I guarantee you, unfortunately, that you don't upset people if you started, dropping first team players just to put academy players on the bench. Maybe there's an argument to use the lap more early on. I probably would slightly agree with that, but at the same time, I think Delap probably caused his own problems by being a bit of a hothead. But back to the Cole Palmer question, mate. I think he's a brilliant player, genuinely a brilliant player. I thought he was good in the game he played as well, surprisingly. He plays a lot these days as a right winger. He plays essentially in the Mahrez kind of role. He can play as a false eight. He can play as a false nine as well. He's played there, but his best work does seem to be cutting on the right because he has a very gifted right foot. And he, I feel like we're saying this in a sound like a stuck record, but he's just technically he's too good already for this level. And the proof is the fact that they've broken the goal scoring record at under 23 level across already this side. They are averaging over 3 goals a game. They have got an incredibly young side, and they're going to win the the Premier League too by a mile. While breaking goal scoring records, which shows to me that these 17, 18-year-olds are already too good for this level. And it's because they're technically, it's like watching City, the City's, you know, when City are strolling, they're just toying it, passing it around. These 17, 18-year-olds are toying with their opposition on a regular basis. And Cole Palmer is a big part of that. And what I will say about Cole Palmer as well, it says an awful lot that he was captain in the under-18 side, despite being a winger. How often do you see wingers captain under-18s? Sides in general, it just doesn't happen for a reason, because that position isn't associated with professionalism. For whatever reason, just isn't. It's associated with Mavericks. And Cole Palmer is very gifted. Like, he reminds me a little bit of, I would say, Perez in the way how football comes that easy for him. A little bit of Nasri, how technically he just ball sticks to his foot. And he's versatile. Obviously, once again, though, you can have all the talent in the world, as we know. You can genuinely be fantastic, but being a youth player and getting to the first team is as much about circumstance as about ability. It's about hard work, and you have to get a little bit of luck. You just have to get a little bit of luck to get into the first team, and because you need sometimes a player to get an injury. I know that sounds crazy, but Rashford's career was... Rashford never played for any of the England youth sides, which people don't realise. He genuinely wasn't even seen as that big a talent for United when he got his chance because of injuries, and it can launch a career. And I guess I'm saying... it's possible that Palmer could get through. It's possible that James McAtee, the lap and whatever, but they do need a little bit of luck, unfortunately. And I can only complain if things look worse in the first team, but they don't, and they're good. And as much as I want to see the academy players come through, I appreciate we're also seeing something special. So it's very difficult. But Ahsan, back to the transfers, which is why you're here, mate. Is there anyone we haven't mentioned today, or anyone you could see potentially leaving, or anyone you can see coming in that we haven't mentioned today?
No. Because I think it'll be very efficient this summer. I think that we will be flexible, but I think we'll be quite efficient. And what I mean by that is, I don't think City are signing 4 or 5 players. City are doing 2, max 3. But the point is that the 2 or 3 that they do will be Haaland, Grealish, Messi types, in the sense that you're talking about not Torres or Ake, or maybe some other signings that we've had in the past, where you kind of look at and you go, is that a squad player or a first team starter? They're going to have a struggle. You see what I mean? I think that this summer is very much about leveling up, about saying to everybody who's there, nobody's place is guaranteed. It's not a reboot or anything like that, but I definitely think that they want to shake it up a little bit. I really do. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but like even Haaland's personality, if you're all in, he's my number 1 target, then that's going to shake the dressing room up. Like, he's a guy. Look at his personality. Look at the way he is. He'll shake the dressing room up. It'll be different. The dynamic will be different. And I think that's part of... Ferguson knew when to change the dynamic in his dressing room. Maybe more than being a tactical genius, he was a genius of looking around the room. And kind of going, you know what? I smell a little bit of complacency. I reckon I should bring that guy in. And obviously they were in a position where they could make mad moves, and do things like just bring Varane in, just add more quality, that kind of vibe. But City can do that now, and I think that Pep's a huge Ferguson fan. Massive amount of respect for him. He will know how Ferguson managed his longevity, and he'll know that part of that is, I think Pep said it himself, you either fire the coach or you refresh the squad, because people get tired of the same messages and the same ideas. And I think that we're seeing we've seen an evolution in Pep as a coach this season. And I think that now he's bought the right to go at the board and go, give me wheelbarrows full of cash so that I can refresh some of these players and make next season be an even bigger step. And that's what I'm excited about it, massively excited about it, because I believe they'll do it. Really?
Ahsan, there's more points I want to talk, but that feels to me like a really good way to round up this video because it's been I've enjoyed it just being with it. I've really enjoyed this transfer chat. I think it's been absolutely fascinating. We're approaching an hour. That's absolutely flown by. It's mad how it's flown by, but it's felt really natural. And even your phone is like, you got to go, Ahsan. You got stuff to do. Ahsan's an important man, guys. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. I can't believe how many people have been watching live. It's been absolutely fantastic. Over 500 people watching live as we're chatting away. It's been brilliant. And Ahsan, of course, does the 9320 podcast, which is just genuinely top tier stuff. There's a link in the description below. And if you don't follow Ahsan as well on Twitter, Ahsan Naeem, go and give him a follow as well. Ahsan's an absolute legend, and he knows his stuff, and he knows people, and it's very interesting. Ahsan, it's gonna be a big summer, isn't it, man? It's gonna be exciting.
It's gonna be a massive summer, mate. I have to use the word massive. It's contractually it's in there. I have to use it. It's going to be a massive summer this summer. This
question's burning in my eyes because someone's mentioned this. Patrick said, if you guys discuss price for Haaland, does our clause give us Sancho give us a slight edge? Quick thoughts on that, mate, because it's a very good point. We didn't really discuss the idea of the price.
I think he's got a release clause. I think everybody's lying. I think that Raiola, it was always weird to me that they had a summer of 2022 like 70 million euro release clause, but you wouldn't have a higher one for the summer before. It just felt a bit like that's not very Mino. And then all I can say is that Chris Wheeler from the Daily Mail did a story last week, which was very well sourced, which said Erling Haaland has a 90 million pound buyout clause, 100 million euros this summer. It has to be paid in one go. There may be a certain date before it needs to be paid, but he thinks that there's a release clause. If you go and dig into Chris Wheeler and kind of some of the stuff that he writes and try and figure out where he would get a story like that, I think it's very well sourced. I would. When I saw that, it made me go. It kind of made sense to me, way more sense than he can go dead cheap next summer, but this summer it's like an auction and you're gonna have to. It's not very Raiola. Like if their plan. So he moved to Dortmund for 15 or 20 million euros, maybe a tiny bit more, but like a nominal fee and a fee that Salzburg could have got a lot more than. Even back then, 18 months ago or whenever he moved. So notionally, now for me, the idea that there's a release clause for 100 this summer makes perfect sense. Like Dortmund will be trebling their money, if not more, in 18 months. So even when you're doing that contract negotiation, you're writing the contracts up. I know that at the time, he didn't go to United because United wouldn't give him any release clauses, or he didn't want to go there. But the point is, Dortmund were like, we're happy with putting release clauses in because we're buying you cheap. So for me, 100 million euro or pound release clause, it sounds very, very logical. And it also explains why City would stick him at the top of their list. And
we love a release clause. We love a release clause, man. We really do, don't we?
Right? There you go.
It's just so easy for us. No, that's a wonderful answer. And you said it makes a lot of sense. I hadn't read that Chris Wheeler story, but that makes an awful lot of sense. But let's end it there anyway. Ahsan, mate, it's been absolute class. Genuinely, absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I hope you have a wonderful day as well. Once again, guys, 9320 podcast is genuinely fantastic. Go and give it a listen. There's a link in the description below. For now, though, let's get giddy. It's going to be a fun summer. Hopefully, a fun summer with lots of shiny silverware to point towards Mr. Erling Haaland. Guys, thank you very much. Ahsan, see you later, mate.
See you later. Oh, the Blues!